Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Design Code series, a podcast where we chat about how AI, data, and design are shaping our world. Think of this as a space to explore how these technologies influences our surroundings, from homes to cities. I'm your host, Sennay Ghebreab, an AI scientist and fellow architecture enthusiast. Welcome to another episode of the Design Code. Today, we are here at the Science Park at the University of Amsterdam. Today's guest is someone who has spent his career rethinking how we design AI for the people who are impacted by it. I'm happy to introduce Professor Sennay Ghebreab. Sennay is a computer scientist and professor at the University of Amsterdam, where he directs the Civic AI Lab. His work centers on socially intelligent AI, that is an artificial intelligence that is deeply aware of the social and ethical context in which it operates. With a background in neuroscience, computer vision, and data science, he now focuses on how cities can use AI to reduce inequality, empower communities, and create inclusive urban spaces. From advising city governments to collaborating with community artists, Professor Ghebreab has been at the forefront of designing AI systems that they just don't optimize but also empathize with people. Today, we will explore what that means for the future of smart cities, urban design, and civic law. Welcome to the Design Code, Sennay.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So I will start with the zero question. I think you like it. Is technology neutral?
That's a good question, an often raised question, and the simple answer is no, of course not.
Yes, I know the answer. I wanted you to explain why is that? Well, where is the place that you think it's not neutral, or is it most of the time neutral? And how do you explain it?
It's not neutral because it's man-made. So, like all man-made things, AI is not neutral, but especially because it's about learning systems, right? Systems that learn based on data, and especially for learning systems, you cannot maintain the idea that since it's a system, a non-human system, it is objective or it's neutral. So all aspects of AI are deeply human, and by that also deeply non-neutral.
Yes. So another dimension of AI that you mentioned is, compared to other technologies, is that it's based on learning from data. And because data is also man-made, it inherently has its own biases that will be encoded in these algorithms or...
Yes,
Okay,
indeed.
yes.
So through the data, but also through the way we use AI, where we use it, when we use it, upon whom we use it. So not only the development and the inherent aspects of AI are non-neutral, but also the way we engage with it in society is non-neutral.
I see. Thanks for this opening. So we are talking about a technology that can go wrong. On the spirit of being optimistic about AI and seeing the good part of AI, can you also tell us a bit about the civic AI? What do you mean by civic AI? What do you mean by socially intelligent AI?
Yeah, let me start with the Civic AI Lab. Civic AI Lab is a collaboration between the two universities in Amsterdam, the VU, Vrije Universiteit, and the University of Amsterdam, and also the City of Amsterdam, as well as the Ministry of Interior. So it's a collaboration, and the idea was from the onset to develop, in a first stage, AI technology for people, and I will explain later what I mean with that. Mm-hmm. In a second later phase, AI technology with people. And then perhaps a decade from now, AI technology by people, right? Citizens being able to develop, use, adapt, improve AI themselves. So the long-term perspective of Civic AI Lab is AI technology by people. But we started small, meaning that we wanted to engage with municipalities that develop, or ministries that develop AI for the people, and we wanted to help them to use it in in a way that also empowers marginalized groups in society, people that are at the margins of society in certain ways. So we focused on a number of social domains in which we thought that inequality was a serious issue, like in education, in mobility, in healthcare. In all these domains, there is some sort of inequality. You have mobility inequality, some citizens groups, population groups, communities in the city are not as equally able to reach other parts of the city, right? So there's inequality in mobility capacities of groups. You have inequality in the educational system in terms of access, in terms of resources that students have, and so forth. So we thought, let's identify a number of social domains and a number of projects where hopefully also the cities and our external partners have data, so that we can help them use that data to perhaps in the first stage identify inequality or bias or discrimination. But going beyond just identifying social bias, discrimination, also use AI to enhance all kinds of opportunities, equal opportunities in these domains. So that's what Civic AI Lab has been doing for now 5 years. We had a bunch of PhD students working on these topics. Some of them will now start defending their thesis, and all really trying to help the city do its best to engage and help and empower citizens.
Great stuff. It seems that there are many stakeholders actually contributing to this research, from, let's say, the scientific staff to municipalities, also policymakers. What are the main challenges that you have in these conversations, in setting the goals, in defining research questions when there are so many stakeholders involved?
I think the biggest challenge looking now back is not the involvement of so many stakeholders, but continuity in involvement and commitment, right? Mm-hmm. So when we started Civic AI Lab and started to engage with civil servants, policymakers, and so on, one of the feedbacks that we got is, well, we've been working with universities for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. And what we continuously see is that we engage in a collaboration and we give them funding, and then we never hear back from them, right? In the sense that PhDs do research, publish, and the scientific publications are great, but we don't see anything in return for the city or for...
like a product. Or
like a product, like a policy advice. So the promise that we made at the beginning is we don't want to be like that, right? We really would like to engage with you and do it for you and through you for citizens. So we are really committed. And we have been also trying to be committed since the beginning by asking data, by checking whether the problems that we address are the problems that the municipality has or the ministry has or citizens have, and also by looking whether the solutions that we try to develop, whether we can develop them in co-creation style with civil servants, with citizens, and so on. And I think the biggest challenge is to have the same kind of commitment from the stakeholders, like municipalities. I understand there's a lot of developments in AI, lots of resources going to AI, so also lots of other opportunities for example, the city to engage with others on topics like AI. But I would have seen rather more collaboration, more continuous, more commitment collaboration with cities.
I see. I would like to ask you this question, because you also brought up the importance of data in developing this technology and also the influence of people who are actually creating this data. And you've noted that AI systems often mirror or amplify the unjust or biases in the society. And when I hear this comparison, I always think, where's the benchmark? Are we comparing AI and these algorithms with humans, with people, Or is it a gold standard somewhere we are trying to reach? Because we are biased, and there are so many services within, let's say, society that people are in charge, and their biases and discriminations and their views are actually being imposed within the system. I think you have many examples of this. But that's a question. Are we trying to be better than humans with, let's say, socially intelligent AI? How do you see? What is the goal? Where do we get?
Yeah, I think, at least the way I look at it, we should be a bit more humble in what we try to achieve. I think we're not at the stage where we are getting better with AI. I think that we can use AI to really reflect upon ourselves as human beings, as communities, as organizations, as governments, right? Through the data and the patterns that we extract and the insight that we extract from this data using AI. That's the most fundamental and most biggest contribution that AI can serve us, right? Being a mirror through the data, through the analysis, through the insights that we get. This is who we are, right? And of course, the systems, AI, and so could be biased, but realizing and understanding and departing from the notion, okay, but the data reflects us. AI builds on the data, may act in a harmful way, but let's make steps back and see, well, the reason that it's being harmful is because we as humans are harmful to one another, right? And I think that step still needs to be made, realizing the reflections that AI is giving us. Once we realize that, then of course we can build on it. We can use AI, the insights, the new kinds of types of interventions and so on to even improve situations of communities, of organizations, and so on. So I am trying to be a bit more humble and pinpoint the real fundamental contributions that AI can provide us.
Yeah, but it seems people are a bit easy on unwanted biases when it comes from human than from algorithms. I think we have seen this example many times when AI has been applied into decision that government makes about subsidies, etc. Why is that? Why people think that the machines should work perfectly while humans are allowed to make mistakes?
I don't know, but one thing that I can say is that human or machine bias or AI harms are also misused as a way to divert attention from the human failures, right? Organizations, I often refer to the child benefit scandal.
Yes,
right? Yeah.
That's a famous one.
What's the data? It's the AI, although it's not real advanced AI. Shifting away attention from the organization, the humans, the policies, to it's the data, it's the system. We need to do something about it. So there's also a structural diversion going on.
Intentional.
It's intentional, often, not always, but often. More often than people often think.
Yes, true. So when I want to really bring hope, when we're talking about AI technology, I'm thinking of giving people examples of how AI can actually make our life better or more just. You just mentioned using AI as a mirror to see what's basically wrong with our data. Do you have any other examples? I think you have a project, maybe we can tap on the school project when you used AI and data. Maybe you can explain about that project. Improving public transport access could actually reduce school segregation. What was that project about? Is it anything good that we can show people?
So this, you're referring now to a couple of projects within Civic AI Lab. One project is focusing on using AI to improve the rankings of students in Amsterdam. So in Amsterdam, when kids in elementary schools need to go to high school, they given preference. And based on that preference and based on an algorithm that the municipality has been already using for almost a decade, students are assigned to schools. And this algorithm is copied from New York, where it was used, but used in a different kind of context. Namely, in the US, in New York, you have a two-sided matching problem. Kids do a ranking of schools, but schools do also a ranking of kids. So you have a two-sided matching problem. And the algorithm, which won the Nobel Prize, was developed for a two-sided matching problem, which is not the case in Amsterdam. In Amsterdam, you have a one-sided matching problem because only kids rank their schools. So from the onset, it wasn't the best solution for this context. Yet it was used, and each year, still lots of kids ended up in low in their rankings, even up to the 18th school of their ranking in the past. So the municipality or the organization that's responsible for this algorithm has been making changes throughout the years, never to the extent that it really created solutions where most of kids and parents were happy with. So we looked at it, we studied the Amsterdam context, and based on that, we made a new algorithm that produces better results. Theoretically, allowing all kids to end up in one of their top 5 ranked schools. But there's a but to it, namely, this is not it's prone to manipulation. A New York algorithm is strategic proof. Mm-hmm. Strategic proofness is a key requirement in many domains, especially matching domains, where parents and kids cannot manipulate it in such a way that they can end up higher, right? So we said, well, okay, strategy proofness in theory is important, but how important is it in reality? Will parents and kids strategize if we let them? And how bad is it? If not, can we not develop a non-strategy proof algorithm, which perhaps a minority of kids and parents might manipulate, but which also ends up in most of the kids ending up in their first top 5. Right? So we developed that algorithm, we tested it, we did lots of simulation studies to see how strategic proofness or non-proofness will affect the lottery. And I think we came up with a solution. The issue is there that, of course, you can develop a better algorithm, but the acceptance and adaptation within the city is a different challenge.
I see. I think I'm interested in also understanding how did you convince municipality to give you the data? Because I believe these are sensitive data and also maybe private. No? Can you explain about the data then?
But it is an important question that you raise, because this is where I see challenges arising also towards the future. So we got the data from OSFO, that's the organization that is responsible, and OSFO also yearly published outcomes, right? So we were able to make use of lotteries in the past to develop our method. But making data public has been something that in the past few years the organization OSFO and others have been trying to reduce, because researchers are making use of the data, parents are making use of the data to see how they can strategize and so on, right? And this is something that I see not within this school project, but also in other projects, that municipalities or ministries or authorities are responding in ways that are less transparent rather than more transparent, giving less data away compared to the past. And the reason is that, people like me and others can come up with algorithms that provide a different kind of solution that, in theory at least, would be better for communities and citizens, but might also be a challenge to implement for authorities, right? So then the question is who's governing, or who's pushing governance, or who's pushing solutions or interventions? Is it city councillors? Or are citizens also increasingly playing a role here? And this tension between now citizens, communities, researchers, producing, testing all kinds of algorithms, even challenging existing policies, is becoming a bigger thing, right? Which is, I think, good. Yeah. And should be promoted and inspired. But from the more, let's say, conventional top-down governance mindset, this is not as desirable. Or
you're not making their life easier.
No.
Yes. So how your lab is actually dealing with this? Because one of the problems that we have in universities is that we are also committed to open source. We want to make the data publicly available, shareable. Other AI scientists could work on the same problem to get a better solution. And you really now mentioned one problem that, well, maybe the government or the municipalities are not very happy with what we are doing. What is your stand on this? Do you work on research projects that you're committed not to make the data open, to keep the data private for that research, or do you always negotiate to publish the data set as well?
So Civic AI Lab and also the bigger groups, Socially Intelligent Artificial Systems Group, is committed to open source, open data sharing. So we do engage with projects, partners, external partners that are open to that. If not, then we do not engage with them.
Okay,
it's as simple as that. Yeah.
Okay, great. I love that that answer. So it makes a clear guideline to what projects to be involved and collaborate with whom.
Which does not make our lives always easy, because that means also less resources or but that's life.
Yes, true. Since we are on the project, I want to also ask you about the paper that you published last year, and it was about whether the technologies, the AI technologies and tools that we have in hand is sufficient for smart cities. And apparently the conclusion of the paper was, they are not yet ready to be applied in municipalities and in the implementation of the smart cities, even though that's, I think the smart cities hype has been around for many years. First of all, what do you mean by that they are not yet ready? Second is, why is that?
You're referring to works of another PhD project, the work of Tim Alfreds, who tried in his PhD work to look at whether we can predict the emergence of social inequality by just looking at visuals of the city. He started by looking at, so there are all kinds of cars making panoramic scenes, pictures of city. And he started with the idea, well, can we use those pictures to extract all kinds of visual features that are predictive of the emergence of social inequality in a city. So he worked on it, and one of his first papers was on if we're able to predict inequality, and in this case, he focused on housing prices. He started by predicting housing prices by looking at all kinds of features, buildings, trees, blah, blah, blah. And the question, when he was able to kind of predict housing prices, the question that he raised was, okay, but can we use these computer vision algorithms and outcomes in such a way that they are explainable to civil servants that might be using these algorithms to predict social inequality or housing prices. So he compared a number of explainable computer vision algorithms to see whether such tools can be used by civil servants or whether they are not there to be used in practice. And he came to the conclusion that there are reasons to conclude that they're not ready yet. On two levels. One, the algorithms do not always produce consistent and trustworthy outcomes right? So if multiple civil servants use the tool and would like to better understand why certain visual features, let's say building properties, lead to prediction of housing prices, if such an algorithm cannot consistently and comprehensively come up with features that civil servants can use, then it's not a sustainable way of using them, right?
Is there a causality problem here? Is that those features are not really causing the housing prices, or is it something else?
Partly, but it could also be that they are causing, or there's a causal relation, but it's too complex to really digest it or explain it to a civil servant, right? Yeah. So on the other hand, there are technical limitations, and this is work that he has done 3-4 years ago. So things might have changed. But on the other hand, there's also the challenge of, is a civil servant computer literate enough to understand? And is an organization like a municipality equipped enough with people that can responsibly deal with it? So it's on both sides. There's still a lot of work to do, and I would even say that the bigger challenge is that on the side of the organization, there's still a lot of work to do. Technically, you see a lot of improvements. Organizations, changing culture, knowledge about computer vision, AI, and so on. That's still a challenge.
I do agree with you, and I think there are many places that we need to improve computer literacy. Is there any organization or any intention that you see? You're working with many people or at least talking with many people from the government, municipalities. Are there any entities that are planning to bring this literacy to let's say, governments and municipalities and people, policymakers, etc. first? And second, I'm going to ask you about the citizens themselves. Do you see such an initiative or intention to bring this literacy to government?
I think the challenge is not whether it's happening. I think the challenge is that we're flooded with all kinds of literacy programs, lifelong learning programs, right? It's becoming difficult to have a good, trusted, and committed educational programs. We have ourselves, with Civic AI Lab, also developed an AI program for civil servants within Civic AI Lab, within ICAI. In parallel, there were AI programs for health practitioners, and lots of such programs are in place, emerging, and it's becoming a bit also education washing now at the moment.
I see. And what about, because also you had this project, I think from the Civic Lab again, including partnership with artists and local communities. And you've argued for design justice in smart cities by engaging, let's say, these local communities. Do you think, so how is the relationship is working? Are you going to them saying, okay, we have AI solutions for you, and they are skeptical, and then give me a picture of the dynamics that you would have with people from the neighborhood?
Yeah, okay. So a concrete example is the community project that we just finished. It's a European Horizon project where the idea was to bring technology, and in particular AI technology, closer to the needs of marginalized people in society. And the focus was from the onset, we're not going to focus on just citizens, but marginalized citizens, because they tend to
not be in the picture.
Yes, right. And the idea was not to have this collaboration between Civic AI Lab and citizens, but to help institutions, municipalities, tech companies, to move them into a co-creation setting. And we were kind of the mediators, knowing about technology, but also having good collaborative engagement with communities, marginalized communities, elderly, refugees, and so on. So our position was to kind of motivate, inspire, but also explore and reflect on these engagements with communities. There's a lot of mistrust, especially from marginalized communities towards authorities, and especially towards authorities that would like to use technology or work on smart cities, right? I don't like the word smart cities. I would prefer wise cities. It's not easy because
What is the source of this mistrust?
In often cases like the child benefit scandal, and there have been other scandals that are widely discussed and debated and shared in media. So most citizens know governments and AI and data are often used to survey us, to control us, and so on. So the idea is that citizens see themselves as potential. They see that the government looks at them, perceives them as potential people that potentially would do fraud, would steal, and so on. So that picture of a government that sees them as such, then uses technology to even advance more their control, their surveillance mechanism, that creates a huge gap in trust.
Yeah, so the source is not technology, but technologies, they think that the technology would basically amplify this surveillance, let's say, agency of the governance.
In my perspective, in my experience, that's the source. So the mistrust is not per se towards technology.
Yes.
It's towards a authority that uses technology to harm them. And what we now do, also learning from all these experiences, is, okay, let's put the authority out of the equation for now. Let's engage directly with...
That's the safest
right?
too.
Safest for them, but also good for us, so that we really start thinking from their needs, their capacities, their talents, and then perhaps at some point put authorities into equation, right? And that's the way forward for Civic AI Lab. So in a more recent project that we started on urban responsiveness, resilience, and so on, we decided to engage only with those groups that indicated we would like to engage with technology, but not if an authority is part of the consortium or... so we start small and see where we end up.
And it's interesting because I think many people actually are skeptical towards AI and in general technology when it is used by states for reasons, somehow good reasons. But when it comes to companies, well, everyone's using, let's say, available chatbots where their data is being collected. Do you see this discrepancy as well, that when it comes to, let's say, generic AI, something that everyone's using, it's different? Their attitude or the people's attitude, citizens' attitude, or even policymakers' attitude is different than something that is being developed for the government.
Yeah, yes, I do recognize that. And I can also understand it because, well, as a citizen, you have a choice, right? If Bank X does not work well for you, then you have a choice to go to Bank Y, right? But you have one government. You don't have a government. You cannot choose your government, right? So
then you immigrate.
That asymmetry has an influence on how,
Yeah, so that's also the case. And backing again to the education and AI awareness, so what are your thoughts on teaching AI and ethics in maybe from early ages in schools to non-experts? Do you think that it should be a really comprehensive program for that, especially with the, let's say, scale of the technology and the power of this technology that we have in hand? Is it? I personally think that it's a bit different than other technologies that we had till now. What are your thoughts? Is it just a continuation of smartphone, I don't know, internet, or is it something that needs another approach in terms of education?
I've always maintained the position that this is something else, right? Because it's about information, because it's when my kids were young, I gave courses on AI to elementary school students, comparing how the brain processes information, how an extremely advanced pattern recognition machine our brain is, and comparing that to machines that also learn from data, which was something that students, even at that age, people quite easily captured, right? Especially if you make the comparison to, well, how do we as humans learn? And then look, this computer is also learning by example. And that makes it much more easier for even kids at the age of 11, 12 to think, oh, so this is pattern recognition. Oh, so this is what AI is doing at a large scale. And I believe that our curricula should be, especially the core curricula, should take into account this whole new way of thinking and educating. And especially now with the upcoming of Gen AI. And yes, we should have worked on it much more earlier than we do, but it's never too late to start.
I think you mentioned something, I think, interesting and important when it comes to explaining tech and comparing it to something very similar, because I think some of the reactions and also a bit not maybe more than media, let's say, hype and bringing, let's say, negative narratives comes from misusing the anxiety that people have towards something that they don't know. And if we actually make it more clear for them, what is this technology, what are the bases from really early ages, then it becomes more clear. And at the same time, we would want to warn them towards what does it mean when data becomes an algorithm and it's not hard-coded and it's not rule-based and everything's can be a bit different, let's say. So these are almost stochastic systems that might respond differently to different situations. What kind of cautions would you give designers and urban planners about the biases of AI and let's say places that can be misused? Do you have any concrete examples in your projects, etc., that you can explain to our audience?
Again, I don't think it's, of course, being cautious for data and bias and so on. Those are things that are important to take into account. But one of the things that we also try to practice in our labs is design justice. So thinking from the design justice perspective, always putting the voices of citizens or marginalized groups at the center. You as a designer, you're not the expert per se, but more the facilitator of the design process. So much more thinking from the co-creative perspective. That allows you to go forward and tackling biases if and when they emerge, rather than looking back and focusing on historic biases that people need to attend to, which is also important. A lot of work is already being done on that. I think going forward is how do we prevent in the future that biases exist? And then co-creation, design justice, principles, and so on become important. And then design, it could be urban design, it could be interior design, but it could also be mental design. This requires design justice. So that would be my biggest take into account, or use design justice as a principle to engage in or to develop, use AI.
And is it something really specific for AI, this design justice, or it's general ethical guidelines that designers need to take into account when designing something for the city, for the people?
It's a general principle. But what I see is that people think, well, but this is technology, right? So design and justice, like we started the conversation with, is AI? Of course, AI is not neutral. It's it develops. It's part of us.
So as design.
So is design, right? So from that perspective, we're just continuing to work on something collectively, and we should do it in a collaborative and co-creative manner, without per se making this distinction between this is an expert and I'm just a consumer, or I'm just a citizen. Collaborative work is important. So, and especially for AI, this is important.
So what keeps you hopeful when it comes to AI and the future of the cities, or wise cities, as you mentioned? Because, yeah, again, there are so many also negative stories about really implementing this technology within the civic services. But what do you remind yourself whenever there is a scandal or something is happening, or in the news becomes a bit bold that, okay, it didn't went well? What is the point that keeps you hopeful?
So, as I said, it comes in stages. In the first stage is that we're using AI in ways that we also, unfortunately, create harm, but that harm is being exposed. Now, it's quantified. No, because it's hard encoded in data or in the algorithm. You can use it to expose or confront humans, organizations with this mirror, right? Oh, you're saying there's no bias or there's discrimination, but you're hard coding nationality as a feature to look at when you do this and this and this. When it comes to intentional bias, discrimination. But there's also a whole world of unintentional bias that's going on, which is also becoming now more explicit because of AI, right? So all these incidents or systematic harms that we see, we can increasingly talk about it. We have words to talk about it. We have data as evidence. And once we go through this phase of, okay, accepting, acknowledging that indeed what we see, all these harms, that's us, that's not technology, then we can then make the next step, which is introspection as a person, as an organization. So introspection then allows the next step, which is imagination, and then transformation. But we need to go through these phases. And the biggest step so far, the biggest challenge is going from reflection to introspection. Okay, this is what I see. So, this is who I am. I wasn't aware that I am that person or that organization or that government. But this requires time, right? So where I get my hope in is seeing farther than just the harms, the incidents. I can also see a trajectory to go out of these harms, because of these harms, into introspection, into imagination, and then real sustainable transformation.
I really love that perspective, because you are not seeing AI as the source of the bias, but as a tool actually to identify it. And I think that's valuable for the technology.
Yes.
So my last question is personally also very important for me. Given everything that is happening geopolitically right now, and knowing that you have a lived experience with war, I went through some of your works in this area, and you are talking about critical thinking and algorithms that can actually help us with fact-checking, that rather than being the feed of propaganda and, let's say, misuse of people's trust. Do you have any convincing example of these examples, these technologies are actually working towards peacemaking, or any trajectory that you see that this becomes something that maybe citizens would pick up? Because this is on their interest, because media would try anyway to basically sell the news or sell the idea, ideology, etc. So what is your take on this? What does it take for AI to become a peacemaker, if ever?
Yeah. So it's still far ahead, but I think the more we're aware of what happens, all the complexities. So we're quite simple human beings. We've got a brain, which is of course complex. We can do a lot of things. But we cannot get all the information and process it. So that's why we're vulnerable to frames, right? You get ready-made information, which you can easily process. Understanding that we are quite simple in nature, although we pretend to be complex, is a first step towards, I think, peace building, towards peace. And AI can help us in getting this humbleness, seeing that life is much more complex, society is much more complex. There are lots of things that we cannot see, but if we can let AI systems help us see through the frames, then we might be able to reach a higher consciousness, a consciousness that might allow us to live together in a more peaceful manner, right? So I don't see AI as an entity that brings peace, but I see AI as a tool to make us more conscious, and by being more conscious, also more peaceful. And I'm saying that also because of these lived experiences, coming from a war-torn society. You see a lot what happens, and you see also the framings that are shared and that are made to fool you in many ways, that are there not to make you conscious of what is happening, whether it's locally or in my case in Ethiopia, Eritrea, or Palestine. These complexities. Well, AI can help us better understand these complexities, and if we can work towards that would be for me worth an AI that gets the Nobel Prize at some point.
That's a game changer.
Yes. As I wrote in articles in the past, when the Ethiopian Prime Minister got the Nobel Prize, it was shocking. This was in 2018. Shocking because I knew the context. And I also knew that at some point, even the Nobel Prize, the Nobel Committee would start doubting whether they made the right decision. So these lived experiences, people that have been living in these worlds of war and hunger and blah, blah, they're not victims. They're in a way more informed citizens. So because of them living there, having experienced that, they have other types of consciousness. They have other kinds of information, and that's why they're so.
And that's the lived experience.
That's the lived experience, and that's why, and it's often ignored or neglected, especially in the context of technology and AI. But this is just lived experience. No, that's the core. That's what we need in AI to make AI more aware, more conscious, and less harmful.
Can we bring this lived experiences as a data to AI? Do you think there is something that is not computable or cannot be represented as a data?
Sure, there must be things that cannot be computed. So but there's much more that can be computed. That's where the opportunity lies. I'm not claiming that everything can be used, computed through AI, but I'm saying that a lot more can be computed, and if we are conscious to that, then we can make it we can use it for ourselves as communities, for humanity in general.
Thanks, Sennay. To be continued.
Thank you for the interview.
Thanks. Thank you for watching or listening to this episode. If you have questions for my guests and me, please comment them down below. If you would like to learn more about me, Seyran, please contact me at s.academy@sciencetudelft.nl. If you would like to learn more about our sponsor, the TU Delft AI Initiative, please visit their website at ai.tudelft.nl.